Relatively actually recent, brother, Neville.
Yes. Thank you very much. And just for this, I'm drinking out of my Canadian cup.
Thank you so much. Even down in Nashville, we appreciate the shout out.
Yes.
So I got in touch with you
Hmm.
through the Freemason Connect app,
Love
which
it.
is it's a great app, isn't it? It's so awesome.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yes.
and you sent me your Masonic history. Uh,
Hmm.
you know, Pretty recent. You initiated March of 2019,
Oh, yep.
passed 2019, and then
Hmm.
raised January of 2020. So you got in just before the kind of pandemic hit.
Correct. Well, I'll never forget. It was March 16th when I operate entertainer buses, but all my coaches, all the tours, like Kiss, and I had a number of buses out on Brad Paisley, and they all had to turn around and come back. And that was just, we all thought it was just going to be, okay, maybe a month, maybe two. And look, it turned into a full year. Yeah.
That Yeah, and knock on wood, vaccines are coming out.
Hmm.
So we were just saying before we started recording, I cannot wait to get my vaccine, and for others to get the vaccine, just so we can open the border again and I can visit some of my
Hmm.
Masonic brethren. I was going to say down south, but when you're in Windsor, it's north, up north in Detroit.
Well, definitely come on down south over to Nashville because before you start hit record, we were talking about my friend Brad Paisley and Doug Paisley, who are Masons, and Doug Paisley is the Brad's father, who actually sponsored and was one of my references getting into Masonry. And you mentioned about country music, so we might have to set something up here for for Windsor, Canada, to enjoy a little bit of country music and Brad Paisley.
That would be amazing. I love Brad Paisley. I love country music in general.
Mhm.
Uh, how I think I've talked about this before with another guest, Sydney Overholzer, who I had on the podcast.
Right.
There's so interesting. I find parallels between the music industry and Freemasonry.
Mm.
I would say the connection is, I was born 1983.
Hmm.
In my lifetime, um, the number of times I've heard that the music industry was, on its deathbed or struggling, whether it be because of tape sharing or
Hmm.
Napster, and now people talking about, the difficulties of concerts and live events during COVID. But the
Hmm.
industry itself always seems to find a way to survive and even in some ways strive, even in challenging circumstances. Uh, Similar to, I think, Freemasonry in that sense, it always finds a way to keep going, even if there are challenging circumstances.
You know what I find that it's because of the human characteristic of adaptability. Like there's a military saying that I like to repeat. It's called improvise, adapt, and overcome. And when you get any kind of challenges, including with whether it's in our industry or whether it's at home or whatever those obstacles or challenges that may arise, the human characteristic, if it's clean, clear, and on the level with itself, i.e., you're on the level with yourself, you understand yourself, you have the tools in order to, or the practice of the tools in order to handle any situation. Not that we're always going to be the best at handling every situation, but we can handle every situation. And that goes with improvise, adapt, and overcome. And I find that the industry, like what you mentioned about Napster, now we're doing digital streaming. Now you obviously have Spotify and iHeartRadio, etc., Sirius XM. Those are all finally generating income for singers, songwriters through different, whether it's mechanical royalties or performance royalties. They've adapted themselves so that the industry can still survive, because the industry will always survive because of the vibrational manipulation that music and the audio projection gives to the human spirit, whatever it is. If you love classical music, country music, rock, it's almost like, I like to call it, a vibrational manipulation of the soul. It hits you in a vibrational frequency that you either adapt to or you like, you identify with it. And it's always going to be here. There's nothing like a live experience. Like, I every year I operate Bonnaroo. I look after the red light management complex. I look after the VIP complex down there. And it never gets old. I've been doing it for 10 years, except for last year, obviously COVID canceled Bonnaroo, but it's a great festival of human interaction and human energy that happens with that. You even look at it with live sports, how 20,000 people in an arena can actually charge up a team that could mount a comeback. There's something to be said for the human spirit, and I love that. I just think, and that's probably what attracts me to my brothers in Masonry, is because we're all of like mind, or most of us are, I guess.
Some of us are out of their mind, like myself, but
But you being
uh,
out of your mind is like mind. You're like-minded.
there you go. I'll drink to that.
Yep. Yep. Me too. I should have put a little bit of rum in here, but sorry.
No, you're talking to a Windsor kid. You should have put in some Hiram Walker whiskey. Give a shout out
Oh,
to Hiram Walker.
nice. I might have to look for that down here. I do definitely like my whiskeys and bourbons. Well, being a Tennessee whiskey, and then we're so close to Kentucky. You're talking Kentucky bourbon, like Buffalo Trace and stuff. I don't want to drop all these names, but some, like anything, moderation. You don't want to go overboard, but moderation, like a nice bourbon and a good cigar. There's nothing like capping off a weekend.
That's very, very true. I've been to a few lodges where the night ends with cigars, which is always a nice way to end a
Oh,
Masonic meeting.
how is your festive board over there in the Great White North?
It depends on the lodge. So the
Hmm.
general the general festive board is pretty informal. There's
Yeah, ours is.
most
Yeah.
most lodges that I attend, I'm a member of, have their festive board or have their refreshment after the meeting.
Hmm.
It's cleared in by the junior warden. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
pizza, pop, beer, like it's whatever
Yeah.
the warden is providing. Though there are occasions where they'll have a fancier dinner either before or after for special occasions, for special
Right.
events. Um, so it
Do
really
any
depends
of
a lot.
oh, I was going to say, do any of the wives ever cook for your pre-meals or?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
yes, sometimes that happens. Some is we do have a few, not in my lodge, but Rose Lodge, which meets at the
Hmm.
Masonic Temple, has a professional chef as a member. So when he
Oh,
does the
no
cooking,
way.
that's a pretty great. Yeah, Brian Batchelder, thank you for
Huh?
keeping me well fed, sir. You're watching this.
Tell him to come visit, and I'll make sure he cooks for us too.
I'll be sure to send it down to
You're
Nashville.
welcome to Lodge 359 in Hendersonville. Yeah, Hendersonville, Tennessee, Lodge 359. I'll let them know you're going to be cooking.
Where is that? Where is Hendersonville Lodge? I've been
It's
to.
north of it's north of Nashville Center. So if you're downtown Nashville, it would be um, kind of like a suburb, like a little. Nashville's kind of sprawled out. You got like Nashville, Franklin, Brentwood. That's all going south. You got Antioch, Murfreesboro. That's going southwest, and then up north you have like Goodlettsville, Hendersonville, Madison, and Hendersonville is all part of this kind of, I guess, what you would call Greater Nashville area, pretty much. It's like from Hendersonville, it's like 15 minutes to Broadway. 15, 18
Okay,
minutes to Broadway. Yeah.
one of my fondest Masonic memories is getting to visit the Grand Lodge of Tennessee in Nashville. What a beautiful building it
Yes.
was, and taking a tour of it was amazing. So yeah,
Nice.
the we talked before started recording. The Masonic journey. Um,
Hmm.
it's an interesting journey, especially right now with the pandemic and going through it. But I guess my
Hmm.
question is for your Masonic journey. You mentioned
Hmm.
something interesting when you sent me your biography. Uh,
Hmm.
you said, my Masonic journey was a long time coming.
Yes, it
What did you
was.
mean? What did you mean by that? Long time coming in terms of you had a desire to join for many years, but it was just later that you could, or you had family
I
members.
I guess the way I would put it is I've throughout my life I've met a number of Masons, and there were, you know, well, the one thing common denominator was they were people of integrity and people that I admired. And when I was in my youth, like I'm talking like in my 20s, I was pretty much a rebel. I was a heavy metal rock guitar player, played in a band called Dorian Gray, did the tours, played the biker clubs, etc. And I'd run into people that I, was attracted to, and somehow masonry would get brought up. And then I would think, okay, I would love to do that. Yeah, let's do that. And then something would happen and I wouldn't have I didn't follow through. So for years it kept coming, and for some reason it wasn't until recently when um, you know a couple of the Brad Paisley drivers and I found out Doug Paisley were Masons, and then I found out Brad Paisley was a Mason, and I was like, you know what? It's kind of like a little light went off, and it's been too coincidental. It's not a coincidence. There's been something throughout my entire life that's been going, hey, this is hey, and I'm not paying attention. And then finally, in a really good conversation with a couple of Masons, I was like, you know what? This is my brotherhood. I should have done this a long time ago. And then when I went through my experience through the 3 degrees, each and every one, I'm getting goosebumps telling you this. Each and every one hit home, like completely hit home, and it was like I could almost cry. Like when I was raised, I swear I could almost cry, and was when I was thanking it at the end. I was just like, man, if I would have done this so many years ago, yeah, but it's better late than never. And I'm so proud to be a Mason. I can't tell you enough. And I, every day I read. There's a book by Carl Davis that I do every day called "Making Good Men Better." It's like a little bit of a workbook. Another one that I do all the time. I don't not really plugging this, but there's a book called Level Steps, and that's one that I read consistently as well. And also our little blue book. But every day I get something. I could read the same. You know what? You could read one passage through one of these things, like one page, and you could read it 7 different times, and it will in depth you 7 different ways. And that's what I love about masonry. It's I don't know. It's just, thank God I'm where I'm at right now.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. The way you say there at the end about being, where you are now. I wonder. I think that's a question not just for masonry, but life in terms of, for myself. I always wondered. Uh, you always look back and wonder when you make a decision whether it's to say join masonry. Did you join at
Hmm.
the right time? Could you have joined earlier? Could you have joined later? For myself, I debated trying to join Freemasonry in Winnipeg, where I grew up, where my dad is a Mason.
I grew
Then I
up in
thought about,
Winnipeg,
nice, great city, isn't it?
born and raised, lived in Little Italy off of Jesse Avenue, and then moved to St. James. And my parents still live there in St. James. Yep.
I'm a Transcona boy myself.
Oh, okay, awesome. Been there many a times.
No,
Yeah.
Murdoch McKay.
So
I
so what? So Winnipeg was your. Did you become a Mason in Winnipeg?
No, I didn't become a Mason until 2007 when I lived and I still live in Windsor, Ontario. I was
Hmm.
going to school. and kind of fell in love with the city and decided, I would um, decided I'd be staying, so I decided to join the lodge.
Hmm.
But that's always the question. I think is um, it seems like people find masonry. Maybe this is like a bias, but it seems like people find masonry or join masonry when they're ready to join. It's kind of one of those things where it seems to work out, even though you may, I myself think sometimes, what if I had joined when I was in Winnipeg or lived in
Hmm.
Ottawa? It seems like it worked out. Maybe not for my brothers who were stuck with me, but it seems like I ended up joining at the right time when I could get the most from it. So I think it's sometimes I wonder if Freemasonry it tends to find people or people find it or join it
Hmm.
at the, maybe it's a fate or maybe it's just a bias. It seems like people find it and join it when they're most ready to get the most out of it on a lot of occasions.
I love that analogy. And sometimes I think what ends up happening, like no matter what time, like your age that you do it, I think it is structured in such a way that it pushes the right buttons to make you get it. And then that's why we probably feel the way we did, is because it pushed those buttons and made, man, if I would have done this when I was 20, how far would I have been doing? But everything happens for a reason. And I guess you're correct. It's do we find masonry? Does masonry find us? I don't I, I don't know. That's
So tell me,
awesome.
yeah, it's one of those. It's the timeless question, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Do you having seen the effects of the pandemic both on your industry and your profession and on Freemasonry, but also seeing kind of what seems like, I'll knock on wood, a kind of coming out the other side of this.
Hmm.
Um, I'm curious, how do you see? Do you think Freemasonry will kind of be quote unquote forever changed in the way that maybe meetings are run or degree work is done, or do you think
I
same thing with
I
the
would say
priesthood?
I
Or
would
will it?
say this. Let's not use the word change like it's a bad thing. Change can be very, very, very good. And change is a good thing, especially depending on how you look at it, treat it, and what you bring with you when you're making those changes. And from all the perspectives, I'm a very optimistic person, so I see positive change coming from this. I see a lot of gratitude, even right now, where I know you mentioned your lodges were closed, but 359 here in Hendersonville, we're having meetings and practice with social distancing. We're just not having any uh, rituals. We're just meeting until we feel that it's safe to do so. We have lost a few members of our lodge, um, for various reasons, and then some potentially linked to COVID, because it's very older people are very vulnerable, especially if you got underlying conditions. My wife is a nurse. She actually just took her second shot for the vaccine yesterday, and today she actually isn't feeling very well. But that was to be expected on the second shot. So from that perspective, I see us treading a little more cautiously with respect to people's spaces and to cleanliness. But at the same time, I see a strong sense of gratitude when we are able to congregate together. And I'm actually really looking forward to, some new EAs coming through Lodge 359, and, you know, um, going through the various 3 degrees and attending almost everyone that I can attend. Um, so I see something positive coming out of this. I really hope so. That most of us find a sense of gratitude when we do come from this and go, "Wow, was that ever a learning curve?" You know, and that's what it should be, is a learning curve.
Do you think it would be the same thing in the music industry?
Yes, I do. Yes, 100% I do. Uh, oh yeah, I really can't wait. We have well, some artists, I'll name drop a little bit, but James Taylor, Motley Crue, Kiss are all big acts that are locking in buses with us for uh, June and August. You know, the later summer months, and fingers crossed, they're all going to go. You know, like we really don't know, but we're praying that they go through, and when they do, even if it's half capacity, I'll be going to do my PR visits so that I get to go see, you know, just to get that feel of live music. It's going to be with other people and sharing that experience. It's going to be beautiful. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that is kind of driven home. This pandemic has driven home for me is that it's one thing to know it intellectually, but on an
Hmm.
emotional level, to realize that we really are social creatures, and that's something that a concert taps
Yep.
into, but also a Masonic Masonry taps into. Is we have a
100%.
desire to be social with each other, to be around each other, to meet.
100%.
Uh,
Yep.
so
Oh,
yeah,
I
that's
can't wait. Yeah.
uh,
Can't wait.
how are your Hendersonville and, to your knowledge, in Tennessee, how are lodges dealing with applicants, entered apprentices, people or Masons waiting to move up the ranks? I know that's one of the bigger
We
issues here in Ontario.
it's in a metaphorically they're on the batter's deck or the batter's cage. They're and they're piling up. Um, so so that's why, like, when the floodgates open, they will open. We will probably every single week, and maybe even doubling up. I honestly, like, if I was going to recommend to someone out there, I would recommend you do it on your own because it's such a special experience. I was fortunate enough to um, go through all three stages on my own, and it wasn't like they were trying to get three EAs through, or three fellow craft through. So it was a very intimate and life mentally life and heart moving experience for me. Yeah.
That is something. Actually, I was just on a meeting last night, a Zoom meeting where we talked about. Uh, it was in Alberta with an Alberta lodge, but the concern of, when those floodgates open,
Hmm.
the the tension between a desire to get as many of your applicants through as you can, because they've
Mm,
been waiting for a while, and you want to get them
yeah.
in, you don't want them to wait longer than they have to, versus a desire to make each degree special, and not maybe doubling or tripling up, but allowing them to go one at a time. I mean, do you think an EA would rather,
Mm.
maybe you have to wait an extra few months, but you can go on your own and it'll be more special?
Number one, I think communication is paramount. So as long as you communicate to the person, and um, my thing is, I would recommend to the person, like, it is a special experience. So I recommend that you go solo, but we can give them the option. I don't, yeah, from my perspective, I would rather see it maybe having setting them up, I don't know, a Tuesday and a Thursday, and just start speeding it through, as long as you can get your members to show up, and everyone can make the time, so that these new, the EAs, or the degrees that these people are waiting to go through, um, can be expedited, but not to the extent where it loses something. Because that's probably, from my perspective, my biggest fear is that it would lose something, and then I feel like we are doing a disservice to that candidate. You you know what I mean?
It's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, it's funny. It's either uh, it's one of those things where it's either like feast or famine. If you have one, obviously for a candidate, going through on your own is very special. But I've
Hmm.
also read some minutes and reports from the 20s and 50s
Hmm.
when you had, a Masonic lodge would put aside a day, and they would have like 15
Oh wow.
degrees all in a day. They'd start at like 10 in the
Mm,
morning and they'd go all through. And those seem like they were also special because
mm.
you're part of a class. So you had like 20 people, you all went through it together, and you all got your degree on Saturday. It seems like
Interesting.
it's like one or the other. But there's been so
That's
long since
really
I've got
interesting because
many.
I've never heard that. I haven't heard it put that way. I've heard of, having that where they do a number of degrees in one day, but I didn't think of it the way you just, and you might sell me on this because that I love that idea of a class actually, which is
Yeah,
like they all come through the experience, but they're sharing different, like if you have 7 different candidates, you're going to have 7 slightly different experiences and takeaways. So if they're all together and they feel a bond there, that's a really good experience. There's some value in that.
and it can lead to um, friendly competition, right? Where who can recite
Who can
the
memorize?
yeah, who memorize it, and we can work together. But I think that's
Oh
a
Lord.
numbers thing. I think 20, or maybe 7 or 8 even. It's like a group, it's a class.
Mhm.
If it's just two, I'm not sure that's the
Yeah.
same feeling you'd get. That maybe
No.
it's better to do one at a time.
Well, it's interesting when I went through my basically I was in my fellow craft and I was trying to memorize. There was a fellow named Falvey that he's a pharmacist up here in Hendersonville. He and I actually did the memorization classes together, and um, we did create kind. There's a little bond there that's interesting. We did our, I was raised. He was raised probably 2 weeks before I was, um, but we did that separately. But just going to practice together all the time and memorizing together, and then reciting it, the memorizations together was it definitely. I just, even talking about it, I feel like a connection with him. It's interesting that you put that way. I think I'm changing my mind now.
I've been known to do that to people sometimes. Yeah, I don't know if there is necessarily a right way, but there is
Hmm,
definitely that connection uh,
hmm,
is something that I think can be very strong in Freemasonry, just in general. A connection between
yep.
a applicant and his sponsor, or
Hmm.
the candidate and the mentor.
Yes. Hmm.
Tell
Yes.
me a little bit about that, about kind of that connection for you Masonically. Like, who do you,
With Doug Paisley.
or just in general, kind of the connections you make in a Masonic lodge on your Masonic journey, and how those help you in Masonry and in life as well.
Well, I think one of the strongest connections I made was with the fellow by the name of Lou. He's an older member, and throughout the whole thing, he was my mentor for practicing and learning and memorization. And we just had, it was beautiful to get that kind of bond with one person in a lodge, especially an elder person in that lodge where you develop uh, a strong connection and affinity for. um, and he's one person I truly look forward to meeting, because a lot of times in practice we would just, sometimes they would take longer because Lou and I would get off on tangents about, loves, life, things we enjoy. Like I have a really cool 2016 Mustang. He has a Mustang that he's had for years. Just different things that you find connections with, and the type of integrity that that person has um, in the lodge. Like our current um, Grand Master is, or actually everyone in the lodge is, it's just awesome. They're just like top shelf people, and we all have our little idiosyncrasies, and some are touchy, some aren't. Some are, you respect the person's um, I don't know, nature versus nurture, how they were brought up. But in a nutshell, I mean, I would back every single one of those people that are in my lodge. It's a lot different. I think, like, because I play team sports, so I have a bonding with the people, like on the hockey teams and the high school teams that I coach. But there's a different level when it comes to the brotherhood of masonry. It's a, and I really can't find the words to quite explain it, other than everything else. Yeah, I hate using the bar analogy, but everything else is like the regular shelf, and then that top shelf where there's like the elite, and you only take it down for special occasions. That's that level of masonry or Masonic brotherhood, and it's just a different vibe and a different feel that is just second to none, really. Um, and I wish everyone could experience, but it's special because it is, I guess, elite and mysterious to the outside people. And once you get in, you understand the beauty of it, and the beauty that it does for you as well and for others.
I gotta ask uh, about if you know any or you have any stories about music's connection or possible connection between music and bands and Freemasonry. I know you mentioned Brad Paisley, but
Yes,
which is
there's a lot.
yeah.
There are a lot of traveling brothers in the music industry, whether they're guitar techs. I have a lot of brothers that are bus drivers that are in the that are masons, and we're everywhere, and there is a strong connection. I mean, we're in the elite sections of like the CMAs, and there are brothers in Warner Chapel, there are brothers at CAA. We're the other beauty I love about it is sometimes we don't know each other until we mingle, and then we find out, and it's like, no way. Oh, and you just, all of a sudden, like where you're in a social environment, say like I'm at a leadership music. I'm a member of this organization called Leadership Music here in Nashville, and I'm at a function for leadership music, and I wouldn't even suspect that this person's a Mason, and then I might see a little pin, or I might see the ring, and the next thing you know, we had a plutonic relationship. It was just kind of like, oh yeah, I know Patrick. Oh, yeah, blah blah blah. And then it's, oh, you're a Mason. Oh, just went to the next level. And then you have your conversation, and now all of a sudden you're on the top shelf. You know what I mean? And you can't replace. It's just a beautiful serendipity when that happens, and I love it. It's awesome.
Are there any bits of trivia? My
Mm,
you know my every Mason, I think, favorite pastime is to watch something on television and then find a Masonic reference and freak out. Like
oh, yeah,
as
yes.
I'm trying to think off the top of my head, I know that the band, the band Wild Horses, I think it was,
Yep. Hmm.
they filmed their music video at the Grand Lodge of Tennessee, I believe it was, or
Hmm.
Nashville Masonic Temple. I've seen Matt Stell's song "Home and a Hometown." The start of it
Yep.
has Joko Lodge, I believe, in it.
Hmm.
Um, any or the Detroit Masonic Temple has all sorts of connections to music.
Hmm.
Any cool pieces of trivia or things that Masons can look out for in music videos, or just famous filming locations, things like that.
You know what? Not necessarily off the top of my head right now. Um, Other than what I can add to that is like people like in the football or like the NFL. You look at Brad Paisley and Peyton Manning doing those commercials, etc. Both are Masons, and they're top shelf people. Yeah, there's been a lot of bands that I know of that have members that are Masons. Uh, but as far as like having symbolisms in their videos, I can't tell you off of the top of my head, but they're there. I mean, even in films, I can't remember. Just recently, someone sent me a video clip, and it was like of one of the older actors, and he literally had a Masonic pin, but you wouldn't have caught it unless you freeze framed it and kind of zoomed in and went, "Hey, that's a Masonic pin," And obviously, he's not going to wear it unless, well, I believe he wouldn't wear it unless he's truly a Mason. I mean, that's another respect that you have with you're not wearing a Master Mason's pin if you're entered apprentice or a fellow craft. You don't earn that right or respect, within. And I believe that we should always follow those certain rules and regulations that we have.
What about from a venue perspective? I
Hmm.
being right across from Detroit, the Detroit Masonic Temple is a well-known. It's not just a well-known Masonic home, but it's
Hmm.
a community home. In fact, I know many people in Windsor who would go to the Detroit Masonic Temple and they wouldn't put it together that it's a Masonic temple. They would call it that, but to them it was a concert venue. Uh,
Right.
how
That's a
many
good point.
do you
Mm.
know of? Do you know of other Masonic temples that are also very famous music venues or have hosted musicians?
No, but I do know one that's supposed to be haunted.
Which one?
The one down, it's south of Nashville. I'll, Off the top of my head, what I'll have to do is pull it out for you because I'll have to go on the computer and dig it. But it actually used to be during the Civil War, it was used as a hospital. And they say that there are spirits and ghosts that actually, and it's still an active Masonic temple, but
That is so cool.
apparently it's haunted, and some brothers have experienced the hauntedness of it, but it's on the historic, what do they call that, the historic registry. um, I'll definitely send you the picture. I'll send you the link. How
That is
about that?
awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. I
Yeah.
loved it. I'll throw the link in the comments. The Windsor Masonic Temple is haunted as well. My Masonic Temple is haunted,
Oh,
so I
okay.
love that type of stuff. I love ghosts.
You love ghosts, you get chills when they
I
walk by you.
I do. It's my favorite. It's one of my favorite
That's
things is ghosts and scary things.
that's funny.
You know,
Paranormal activity.
there you go. And I did an interview with brethren from Norfolk Masonic
Hmm.
Temple.
Hmm.
Another a very interesting concert venue itself, but also it does every Halloween it puts on a um, haunted Masonic temple, and it has ghosts and goblins, and it's a really
Mm,
cool thing that they do. So I love that type of
right.
stuff.
I bet Halloween must be fun at your lodge.
The ghosts are friendly. They're all brothers, so it's cool.
Okay, good. That's awesome. I can live with that.
Your we've talked about your Masonic journey
Hmm.
so far, and how it's changed and adapted under COVID. Um,
Hmm.
are there any moving forward? Are there any things in your Masonic journey you're looking forward to? Do you have any ideas, or are you kind of my philosophy is I always try not to plan too much because the best laid plans. I like to um,
Hmm.
just kind of enjoy the journey as I'm taking it. I guess my question for you is are there things you're looking forward to in your Masonic journey, or are you kind of taking it moment by moment?
I am taking it moment by moment right now, but I definitely have plans. I want to run through the seats. I have plans, but I have 2 more years and then I'm going to semi-retire. And when I mean semi-retire, I don't really believe in retiring. I just believe in changing activities that take up your time. Which would be, I would love to dedicate more time. Yeah, I'd like to be like Lou, um, and and dedicate my service to my brothers and progress through that arena, and that will happen in the next couple of years when I can leave behind my managerial hat and leave behind all this crazy touring industry business and move on to something a little more peaceful. and a little more, I don't know, soul feeding. if,
I
if you,
I I love going through the chairs. I'm a past master a couple times.
oh, awesome.
The uh, as a in my opinion, the one chair, I'm trying to think, it's the
Mm,
same in the States,
yep.
that maybe doesn't always get the respect, or it doesn't always get noticed as much as it should. I really think the deacons are such an
Ah,
important to me, that the first time I went through the chairs, I actually skipped those. I went
mm,
when in Canada we have what's called an inner guard, and then that
okay.
goes from inner guard to deacon. And I skipped it the first time around and went right to junior warden. But I
Right.
really think the deacons are such an important chair because they really do set the tone
Mm,
for, not to give too much away.
hmm.
Not everybody watches this as Mason, but if
Right.
you have a nervous deacon, you're going to have a nervous candidate. You're going to have
Interesting. Yeah.
it's. I've always found that that's one chair. When people talk about offices that are, every office is important, but
Hmm.
I think the deacon chair, the importance of it is sometimes lost on brethren. Just that's a bit of a tangent, but a good deacon who's calm and knows what they're doing really helps set the tone for a degree and for lodge work, and even for bringing in a dignitary. I don't know if you
Right.
if you the same thing, or if you. I guess what is your thoughts been looking at the different offices in a lodge and what they do?
I like the Tyler just because he gets to carry a sword. It's like, but as far as I mean, to me, the mass, the grand, or um, I mean, all chairs are important. I believe. I never really thought of the deacon role, but it makes sense what you just said because that is the like the that's like the shepherd for the candidate. And if that shepherd's nervous, yeah, it's all energy. You're gonna pass off on that energy is gonna come across. Um, yeah, I don't really have anything too much to add to that because I haven't been through the seats. So, I was curious, like, where do I start at junior warden? Where do you start? Like, what's the
Uh,
path?
in Ontario, right? It typically starts with the steward, um,
Okay.
which are like assistants to the junior warden in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
Um,
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, every office is so valuable.
But
It's
you
really
said
hard.
you jump. You
I
said
did
you jump.
the first time, yeah.
Yeah.
I jumped the first time. So when I was my mother lodge, Windsor Lodge, I jumped from inner guard to junior warden just because of
Okay.
who could be and couldn't be an officer at the time. I don't regret it because I was proud to be. That was this next step to being master.
Mm-hmm.
But I was very happy that when I affiliated with another lodge and I went through their chairs, I got to be a deacon and
Mm-hmm.
take candidates through. And yeah, I just that really, to I've been a Mason for about 13 years, and to this day, I
Mm.
do think that the deacon is maybe not the most important office, but definitely the most overlooked in terms of what what a good deacon provides to a lodge, especially during a degree. Um,
Right.
yeah, because I've been to lodges where you have a nervous deacon, and you can just sense it in the candidate and in the work that's done as a result,
Right.
versus one who's calm and relaxed. So
Hmm.
I would say if you get a chance, when you're going through the chairs, and when you're a deacon,
Yes.
it's just such and it really is in a sense a privilege to be able to be a guide for a candidate going through,
Hmm.
and to be the one who shepherds him safely, if you will, through a
Yep.
degree.
Correct. Yeah. I'm
Uh,
glad we're talking about this. I feel honored that you even asked me to come on your podcast. It's thank you.
I'm
You know.
honored to have you, and that brings up a very good point, which I wanted to touch on. The way that I
Yes.
invited you onto this podcast was through the Freemason Connect app. I've had Luke Evans, who created the
Hmm.
app, on, but tell me about your involvement with the app, and just what you think of it, and how it's helped
You
your
know what?
Masonic journey.
I can't even think of. I'm trying to remember what sparked me or how I found it, and I can't remember if it was maybe on because on Facebook I belong to one of the groups, um, one of the Masonic groups on Facebook, and like any social media platform, sometimes if you have too many members it can get convoluted. You have opinions, you got people, because in masonry, to me, one of the biggest things, or one of the most powerful things that I know about it, that I love about it, is the brotherly love. And brotherly love, like a house divided, will fall. And if you start bringing in politics and religions into it, like viewpoints, um, that can be a slippery slope unless you have people that are very um, strong spiritually and very uh, empathetically conscious of others. And so it was kind of like on that platform, I was just seeing some things, especially during the political upheaval that was going on over here in the US with Trump and the Democrats, Republicans and stuff. And it took on this slippery kind of thing. So it kind of turned me off a little bit, where I was posting positive posts because that's the kind of guy I am. But um, somehow I saw something and I looked into it, which is the app, and I figured I'd give it a try. And I love the vetting process, because that's what's missing on a lot of social media platforms. It's like, take a picture of your card so that I can see, like, in our cards, there's the signature and the lodge and has the secretary's name, etc. So to me, I'm not saying that's a perfect way of vetting, but it is a way of vetting. And I started seeing brothers from where I live, like Windsor, and when I was waiting for my green card in Vancouver, like BC, and then other brothers. And I'm thinking, what an awesome app to get to know your other brothers, of brothers from another mother, that are just out different parts of the country and that are of like mind. And so I'm still experiencing it because I'm still new to it, but from my initial experience and obviously being asked on this, I'm loving it. I think it's a beautiful idea, but I still feel that the ones that are operating it, make sure you vet it properly. Keep up the good work, is what I would say, so that we can talk like this.
The vetting process, right, in anything, whether it be these apps or even guarding the West Gate, is so important. I
Yes,
think with Freemasonry, right?
right. Well, and that also metaphorically translates into your mind, and the people that you surround yourself in life. Is you have to have, like, whether you're reading, I don't know, fake news or whatever, you have to have an invisible Tyler guarding your gate of your mind and guarding the gate of your soul and your spirit, to make sure that they are allowing the right people or the right information or the right spiritual energy into you. So we're constantly on guard. We will be until the day our creator takes us back, you know? So, and that doesn't mean you got to walk around fearful. It's just you know, be that guy that walks quietly and carries a big stick.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, one thing that I would suggest that people allow into their mind and uh, take a look at is your podcast, which you told me about on
Oh,
Spotify.
yes.
I wonder, I got something I got to show you from my time in Nashville.
Okay.
So I'm trying to grab that, but could you talk quickly about the Company Pioneer Coach podcast, how to find it,
Yes.
and a bit about Pioneer Coach as well, just in general?
Well, Pioneer Coach started in 2001, and what it is it's a high-end uh, entertainer bus company. And they're basically sleeper coaches. We build our own, and they cost about 800,000 plus, depending. We've built custom coaches for artists like Alicia Keys and 21 Pilots, etc. And those buses are usually like in the 1 million. north of $1 million. And if you have the money, we'll build it. And they're sleeper coaches. We also build 12 bunkers there for crew, and they're basically a hotel on wheels, and they transport, techs, crew, band, artists from city to city when they go out on these tours. And country artists, every weekend they go out and they have an entourage of about 3 to 5 buses and semi trucks, and it's basically their home on wheels. They do a show. The drivers show up at 11 o'clock at night. Everybody loads up and they move on to the next city. And the drivers have to be smooth and safe and good people. And they got to be molly maids. And they safely transport the client to the next city. They wake up in the morning. Drivers clean their buses and then they go to the hotels. And the band wakes up and the artists wake up at the venue, and then they go and they perform their shows and then they move on. It's really a nomadic life. Very, it's and like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of drivers and artists out on the road that are Masons, because they are travelers, and that's the industry that we work with, which is Pioneer Coach. And I've been with the company since 2001. I'm a manager, fleet operations and driver manager here. And, we had a podcast, or we have a podcast. It's you can find it on all the podcast formats, called Pioneer Coach, an inside look. I think it was Pioneer Coach, an inside look. But what the podcast originally started at was podcast. The first episode is the history of the entertainment coach industry, like where it started back in the 40s. And it started with old seated coaches where blues artists and country artists would rip out the seats in the back and basically just throw a mattress down so they could sleep in them. And then you fast forward into the 50s and 60s, and then someone went, oh, let's bolt a couch to the floor, and let's do this. And then they turned into like motorhomes. So, but motorhomes that could take 12 to 20 people on the road with them. And as it rolled into the 60s, they became almost what they are now, which would be bathrooms, TVs, couch, maybe a master bedroom in the back. And, with new technologies and stuff, you fast forward in through the 70s and 80s, and you get these luxury coaches. And once the 90s hit, you started to get what we have now. And if your listeners want to go to our website, we have pictures of what we build in the interiors, and you'll be amazed at what our interior builders do. It's my Jeff White, who's our designer, used to work for NASCAR, and he just basically tells me, well, it's a glorified hallway that I have to make to look like an apartment. So that's really what he's doing. It's like taking a hallway and trying to make it look as comfortable as possible. And our website is www.pioneercoach.com, and go to the fleet, and you'll see some of the amazing builds that our guys do. And it is a luxury form of transportation. Through COVID, we actually, it was a lifesaver for our company because the industry's been completely shut down. But it was a tragedy too. The hurricane in Louisiana, FEMA used 42 of our buses to house the workers, and we were able to get paid for that. And it was almost a month or more of our buses down there. So thank God, for that, was able to give us enough revenue to keep the doors open. Everybody else is laid off. My drivers are on furlough, working for other companies as commercial drivers, but I'm looking at 95% of the drivers coming back in May, June, July, when the industry starts to kick in. So I'm blessed that way. But it pretty much is, like I said, a hotel on wheels to transport all the people that are involved in the shows that you see, whether it's at arena, stage, or sheds. We're the ones that bring them there safely. That's what we do.
I will definitely throw the link, the website link, in the comments or in the description for this video.
Thank you.
My dream is, when I'm a millionaire, is to, be able to get one of those styles of buses,
Mhm.
and just travel around and do like a touring of all the Masonic lodges or temples, through Canada or through the States or something like that. I think that'd be an amazing thing to do.
You just gave me an idea. That would be a brilliant plan to piece something like that together and use one of these types of buses, like literally put a package together. And you could easily, like most of the buses, if it's a working horse bus, it's 12 people can travel. Usually more comfortable, it's 8. You put them into 8 bunks. And if you had 8 Masons that wanted to go and say you do a, I guess you'd have to, when you did the logistics, you'd have to make sure, I don't know, like when they have their meetings, etc., how you would route it so that it makes sense and there would be someone there to take you on tours. But that's a brilliant idea. Look at
And
you.
I got a couple, and even the meetings. You don't even necessarily need to base it on meetings per se, though that would be
Mm,
maybe the most fun. But you could, like in Ontario, for example,
mhm.
normally every year around this time, I would be on the road in a whole bunch of these small little towns because our Grand Master has his different receptions
Mhm.
throughout. So he'll be, Monday he'll be in like Chatham, Tuesday maybe
Ah,
Ruthven, Toronto,
mm,
Stratford, like all these towns every day of the week, as part of
mm.
receptions. And then, he'll go up north, which is interesting in Ontario. Up north, it's you're flying there basically.
Ah,
But you could tie it in with that. You could tie it in with all sorts
true.
of different things, or even just tours of buildings. You stop by and you
Mhm.
the but yeah, I just think that's one of my dreams is to one day do something like that.
That is a really good idea. Very good idea. I might, you and I are outside of the podcast. Let's converse on an email on this, and maybe we can
Absolutely.
put something together. Yeah, maybe we can, and then send it out to the brothers. I mean, obviously, there's fuel and driver costs, etc. But I know some guy in the bus industry where we could probably get a deal.
And hopefully, I'm sure if you took, 8, 9, I don't know how many you could legally fit in a bus because I've been known to take some bus trips where we may have packed the thing a bit more than we're supposed to. But if you divide up the costs amongst several brethren, I'm sure something would be. I don't know. It just seems
Right.
like a really cool thing.
You can fit 12 people on a bus.
Okay.
On our kind of coaches, it would be 12 people because they're sleeper coaches. So instead of having a hotel, you're rolling with your hotel, which means you save money on actually staying in a hotel. I mean, if you wanted to, you could get a shower room for the guys to shower, but we also have shower buses. So you could have a 12 bunk shower bus and pretty much it's your home on wheels. Stock the fridge. It's a full size fridge, convection oven.
That would be very cool. I'd love to talk more about that.
We will. We'll do it outside the podcast.
Something else I gotta show this because this is when I was
Okay.
visiting Nashville and had the
Yep.
chance to visit the Masonic Temple. I also visited another place. Now my parents watch this, so mom, close your eyes. But I got
Mom,
this,
Mom.
and see if I can get it in front of the
Oh
camera.
no! Move it a little more this way. Okay. Yeah.
Let's see if I can maybe hold on one second.
That is awesome.
I got to make sure that people watching this can.
Uh,
Where is it? Or is it on
yeah,
the thing?
I know exactly where that is and where you were. I hate to say it, but yes, I know. I drive by it all the
See,
time.
you drive by it. I'm not going to say how I got that sweatshirt, but the point is,
Oh,
I am an official member of
that's
the
awesome. Point
stripper
is, you
club.
have a souvenir.
Yeah, stripper club Deja Vu
Yep.
Nashville. I'd like to
Yep.
say to I forget her name, but she was. Thank you for the sweatshirt. She was a very friendly and kind lady.
Oh, they will love it. They just got a plug.
I'll put their website in the comments in the
Uh,
description of the video too.
that is awesome. That's funny. Yeah, I go by there on my way to hockey because it's over by Centennial Sportsplex. There's like three different big hockey rinks here in Nashville, which is kind of odd since I come from Winnipeg. I've played hockey all my life. I played on the York Yeoman, well, like was on that team in whatever, but then they dropped me, and I ended up being on the house league. But anyways, that's another story. But I got to play. I'm still playing hockey, like I mentioned, and what I loved when I moved down here is the Nashville Predators brought this southern town into the hockey world, and they are diehard hockey fans with the Nashville Predators. Almost every high school here has a hockey team. It's like I don't get homesick because I got music, I got hockey, and I got great southern food. So it's like, what are you gonna miss? I miss
That
my
is,
Canadian brothers, but yeah, and there's a lot of Canadians down here too, from Winnipeg, Ontario, everywhere. There's actually a group on Facebook that I belong to called Canadians in Nashville, and it's a so we have our own large community down here as well.
when you have Canadians and country music and hockey and Southern food, that's really all you need. I can't think of anything else that
Me
would make
neither.
me happy with those things.
Well, come visit. Invitations open.
I would love to, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for talking to me all the way down in Nashville. I really appreciate the time, and it was a really great interview. I loved it.